What is up, guys? It is Dope as Jay bringing you guys another video. In this one, we're going to be talking about the interview Neil Druckmann recently had with Variety. We're going to be including some excerpts from that interview as well on the screen so that you guys can see the full quotes because we're going to be diving into that. He mainly talked about The Last of Us TV show, Intergalactic, their new IP that they have coming out pretty soon, as well as the potential for The Last of Us Part 3, which is very, very exciting to hear some of his quotes about that as well. Mainly, we're going to be focused on Intergalactic and The Last of Us Part 3 quotes because the TV show is what it is. I didn't really watch the recent season of The Last of Us Part 2, Season 2, so I don't really have many thoughts about that. So let's get into it, right? In the question regarding Intergalactic, right, the Heretic Prophet that got announced in the Game Awards in December, they said that they've been working on it since 2020. They're really deep into the process of making that game right now. And the interviewer asked, hey, is this going to be something that they're going to show off at the upcoming State of Play presentation? And he says, hey, we're making it, we're playing it, we're firing on cylinders. He says it's the most ambitious game we've ever made. It's the most expansive game we've ever made, and the most expensive by the time that they finish it as well. He also talked about Troy Baker being involved in the game as well and having a character in the game. So that's pretty exciting for people who are fans of Troy Baker and enjoy his performances in gaming, right? He also talks about some of the challenges that comes from making a game like Uncharted and The Last of Us, and then transition into something that's a bit more sci-fi related, right? Because even when you look at something like Uncharted and The Last of Us, right, they're still very, very grounded games, right? You know, these are his words that he's saying, right? He also says here we not only have to come up with the universe and what the rules are for the universe, what's the history, because we're jumping 2,000 years into the ultimate future, right? So he's getting into the dynamics of what it is to make Intergalactic versus Uncharted and The Last of Us, which is really interesting to get that insight, right? Um, and then he's talking about what's next after Intergalactic, right? Because people are curious. Like, The Last of Us Part 2 was a game that was critically received. A lot of people liked it, but then you also have like the general audience of people. There was a lot of backlash towards that game, especially when it was getting leaked back in 2020. We'll get into that a little bit in this video, but he says we don't have much planned for the future because they've inherited a lot. He also said that we do a lot of our best work when we're really excited and really passionate about, right? So they're very excited about Intergalactic. They're hyped about making that game. They're passionate about making that game. And that's great, right? Because I don't really know what to expect from that game. They haven't shown too much outside of the fact that the game is going to be more sci-fi focused, right? So I want to see more from that game before I build up my expectations and excitement for it. But I don't doubt that they're going to make a solid title, right? Like, Naughty Dog has a long history of making really, really good AAA titles, right? And despite how you might feel about the story of The Last of Us Part 2, the gameplay was very, very solid. A lot of the improvements that they made from the gameplay and design standpoint from that game versus the first one was amazing to experience, right? And I suggest people play the game, honestly. Like, if you've never touched the game, play the game. Like, story stuff aside, play the game, get your hands on, right? He also talked about how they were debating if they should go straight into The Last of Us Part 3. And they had a long period when they looked at ideas for that game. They looked into their other IPs like Uncharted and Jack and Daxter. And the team was very, very excited to do the sci-fi thing, right? So let me say this, right? If you guys watched the Grounded 2 documentary about The Last of Us Part 2, you know, it's a 2-hour documentary about the entire development cycle of that game, and you really get to see how Naughty Dog operates and how a lot of the guys that were working on that game, the writers, the designers, QA testers, everybody from the top down, you get to see their process, right? What their thought processes were making that game. And I can say this from watching that and listen and like listening to this quote, right? Like, when you read the quote, we do our best work when it's something we're very excited about and passionate about. And then you think back to that documentary. I'm going to leave a link to that as well. I'm going to include a clip in this video as well. That game was the most stressful environment that they've ever worked in, right? In regards to crunch, in regards to managing expectations for that game, as well as that game getting leaked. And you seen like by the time they hit 2019, 2020, a lot of people were getting burned out. They just didn't have the energy to pull through with that game. And then to see the reception that game got, right? Like there was a lot of hatred towards that game. A lot of the actors who worked on the game, particularly the person who was performing as Abby on that game, got a lot of death threats, and it was really bad, right? Like the reception to that game was really, really bad. Me personally, I enjoyed it. I loved it. I loved the direction that the game went in. Um, and I don't mind people having criticisms for the game and having their own view of what they thought of the story was of that game, right? And their interpretations of it. But it got too far, right? I think that game in particular brought something out in gamers that I've never seen from the gaming community ever, honestly. And there's a lot of titles that get a lot of hate, right? But this was on an entirely different scale, right? And I think that after The Last of Us Part 2 and Naughty Dog making that game, they just needed to have a clean slate and make something else, right? Because you go from The Last of Us Part 2, which was this very like emotional, even at times stressful story to go through, right? And my only issue with the game was really the pacing, right? I didn't mind the story. I actually enjoyed the story. It was the pacing of the game for me towards the end was like, all right, this is kind of dragging, and you saw this with Uncharted 4 a little bit as well, but you can really see in that documentary that team was just drained of like all of the passion that they had for the game, and they loved it, right? Like they put their all into this game, and for it to be received the way it was received, they needed to pivot to something else, which is why when you look at this quote and he says, hey, the team was very excited to do the sci-fi thing that we've been talking about for a while, and that's where our passions lie. Like I think that a lot of the passion of the Last of Us Part 3, and you just need time away from that project. Like you need time away from that IP so you can make something else and then come back to it with a fresh vision and a renewed, invigorated spirit towards that, right? Because like I said, you watch that documentary, and I'm gonna play an excerpt here in a second, like it got really, really bad. And even though they're very passionate and they're great at what they do, it kind of got really stressful. So I'm gonna play that clip for you guys right there, really quick, okay?
I think that I don't know if it's the whole studio, but I know I'm definitely feeling very tired right now. I'm feeling a little burned out. I'm realizing that I can't crunch like I used to. I can't put everything I have into these games as much as I was able to when I first got here. It's pretty unanimous that this game is really big, where it's bigger than we'd like it to be.
The Last of Us Part 1 is small compared to this game. My argument, make the game small again. I don't even call them small.
There were times when I was writing like 40 pages of in-game dialogue a night. Neil kept saying, stop, you have to like give it to somebody else. We will hire somebody, we will make this work. And I was like, I think it'll just be, I was just bullishly like, I can handle it, I'm tough. I would like somebody to teach me how to have work-life balance.
There are some times where I wish I had somebody in production or a big brother that could be like, no, go home. This is great. This is already great. You don't need to do the next thing.
I feel like at any given point, you'll go into the kitchen and you'll find people, what I would say, salaning about the game, like going deep philosophy into what's working, what isn't. People criticizing this or that. This doesn't look good. I don't like this scene. This doesn't work for me. I hate this.
You know, like they're going to lunch and like expressing doubt to each other and like, is this gonna come together? Is this the one that like screws Naughty Dog up? Let me just exude whatever confidence I have left. Let me try to bestow this person with it so they can feel inspired and go off and do their work. But then sometimes you're alone in the office and you're like, what if this doesn't come together? What if this is the one that sucks? What if this is the one that sinks Naughty Dog? So then you have to like kind of bury it, compartmentalize it. Who knows what damage it does to your body while you're doing that? Because ultimately, you can't let that fear dictate how you work, and just keep the faith.
Yeah, you guys can see from that clip, things at Naughty Dog got really, really rough during the development of The Last of Us Part 2, and even after the game being launched, a lot of the hatred sent their way, a lot of it, in my opinion, very, very unjustified. So you can see why they wanted to make a game like Intergalactic, right? They didn't want to have to go through the experience of going from The Last of Us Part 2 and hopping straight into The Last of Us Part 3. They needed to just step away from that title and revisit it a different time. And when will The Last of Us Part 3 be made? Who knows, right? Will it be after Intergalactic? I hope so, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's something that comes out during the middle of the PS6 generation or even towards the end of the PS6 generation, right? Because you have to understand, like, at this point in time, the way that Naughty Dog is configured as a studio, they take their time with their games. They're going to put years and years of time into development of that title. So we'll see what happens into the future. Let me guys know your thoughts on this recent Neil Druckmann interview. Do you want to see a Last of Us Part 3? Let me know your thoughts of Intergalactic. Hopefully they show that game during State of Play so that we can see more of that game, so we can have a better understanding of what they're trying to do with it, so that we can build up our excitement, right? And I'm out. Peace.